Okay, good.
She's not focusing really good.
If it would help to turn this light off. I'll have to turn this one off. Less reflection.
No, it's more of an issue of focusing. This is hard. Can you take this so I can move?
Yep. See? Now you have a little empathy for the camera woman.
Mm-hmm. Making my shoulders hurt.
I think what's happening is it's focusing on the reflection instead of on Carol. We're learning so much, Carol. Thank you for teaching us.
Yeah.
How long do you normally stay in this position? Until it stops or a certain amount of time?
Well, after we're done with our call here, just about 3 or 4 more minutes.
Okay.
And then after we're done, let's say you do this 2-3 times a week. You can shake for 10-15 minutes tops.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay.
And like I said, this is something you'll learn. And if at any point you have questions, all you have to do is call us.
Okay.
You let us know that what you have a question with, and we'll help you walk through this. So, because we want you to learn this process so that you feel comfortable doing this on your own and going through. And if you want to just talk about what you're experiencing with the process of your body tremoring, that's what we're here for.
Okay. That sounds great.
So this is too many exercises for me to remember, and I'm sure you might have trouble remembering them all.
Yeah.
There's a book and a video available that will map out the exercises.
Sure. And as you practice this, some people are capable of just getting down on the ground in the position you're in now and starting to shake. I can't do that. Well, I can do that to a certain level, but I find that my quality of tremoring is far better if I do all the exercises.
Oh, okay.
And that's up to you knowing what your body can do. Petra doesn't like to do the exercises. She doesn't need to. She can get down on the ground and start shaking. Doesn't work the same for me.
It's almost like doing these after a while. It roto-rooters your system, and your system remembers how to do it, and then you don't need the exercises anymore. In fact, I find that if I'm in an emotionally intense situation, I'll start to shake, which I didn't used to before. So then I do stop it, and then I go home, and then I do TRE,
So you're able to stop the trembling in the moment and postpone it?
Yeah, and we've been doing that all of our lives, We've been stopping it. We don't even notice that. But that's my cue now. It didn't used to be, but now that I've done TRE for a while, That's my cue. I feel that shaking. I feel my body saying overload, overload, and then I go home that night and I'll do TRE.
Okay. And you're saying that if the emotional flooding begins, that by putting my legs down and out that would stop that?
If the emotional flooding begins, straightening her legs will
Yep.
stop that.
Yeah, at any point you have the choice, Carol, of working with the flooding. Anxiety and memories we like to cut off. There's no sense in going there. Emotional flooding sometimes is up to the individual whether they want to deal with it or not. If you don't want to deal with it, straighten your legs out, lock your knees, cut it off.
Okay.
That's completely your choice. But the part of the beauty of this is now that you're experiencing the tremoring, you are releasing stress and trauma. You don't have to relive the trauma to do this. So it's entirely up to you whether you want to or not.
Okay. Now, in terms of like trauma and the memory fragmentation, does this type of thing help to reintegrate those fragments and eliminate or at least decrease dissociation?
Does this? He's having a hard time hearing you, Carol. Does this decrease the fragmentation of the memories and decrease dissociation?
Yes, it will.
Okay.
And I'd give you all the neuroscience and neurobiology of that I understand, but this process was developed for people who are in war zones and disaster zones, and those people have some real serious issues with dissociation, with fragmentation. I mean, what'll happen, this is my perspective now, as you begin to shake off this energy, eventually that story will be allowed to put its place back in what we would call your declarative memory. Right now, when trauma happens in the memory, it happens in what they call the procedural memory, which is, all right, you learned how to ride a bike. That's part of your procedural memory. It doesn't feel like a memory every time you get on a bike, but your body remembers what to do to make the bike go. That's procedural. Trauma is locked into your procedural memory, but we fragment it because it's so overwhelming so that it's not in our basic declarative. It's not part of our story memory. And as you shake off the energy of that, eventually what happens then is you're in a position where you can look at that memory, or it'll come back to you and you'll say, oh yeah, boy, maybe, and you might even say, but that's not how I remember it. Well, and that's fine. But it takes all what I like to call the punch out of the memory itself, because when we're reliving our trauma, it has all of the fear, the despair, the hopelessness, the helplessness. That's why we stay away from it. And as we shake off this energy, we shake off that hopelessness, the helplessness, the fear, and all the rest of that, so that finally that memory can take a place in the story of our life. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Very much so.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, you're welcome.
So how long has it been?
Oh, you are good to go. So why don't you go ahead and straighten your legs out. And just lock your knees briefly. And you might want to just shake it out a little bit, and then when you're ready, roll over on one side. Oop,
Okay.
yep. There you go. And then when you feel like you're ready, go ahead and sit up. But not until you're ready. Well, there you go. All right.
Now we can't see your head.
There we go.
Is that any better?
Perfect.
Yep. Now, go ahead and get your glasses.
There we go.
All right.
Now I can see again.
So let's check in again. How do you feel physically?
exercise, like hiking or something, or yoga. So I can feel that kind of a relaxed after
Sure.
effect.
Good. How do you feel emotionally?
Emotionally, I don't feel a whole lot different. Maybe some calmer.
Okay.
I don't know whether that's because I just did. I'm kind of nervous not knowing what to expect here. And now that I'm doing it, I probably feel calmer in that way. But also, I think I feel calmer overall. Less anxious.
Cool. Do you have any questions?
You say that there is something that I can get to help me to remember with all the
Sure.
exercises are.
I'll send you the link to the website, and that has David's books. It has the
DVD.
DVD, mind blank DVDs. And it's got workshops and all that kind of stuff on it. I mean, it's a good source of information. Then, and again, we're here. I mean, over the next couple of weeks, we want you to keep doing this. And if you have any questions beforehand or afterwards, go ahead and get a hold of us, and we'll be more than happy to talk with you.
Okay. And you would recommend doing this like 2 or 3 or about 3 times a week, or after a stressful or stressful day type of thing, event?
Does it make a difference?
Well, that's what we were told, about 3 times a week, wasn't it?
Yeah, 3 times a week. Partly because when you're transforming what's your being, your body and mind are connected, and what you're doing now is beginning to transform a lot of what used to be, and everything in you needs that time of integration. So if you're doing it every day, it could get a bit overwhelming. So doing it every other day, and part of that will be up to you. You might find that you can, maybe you'll find that you're comfortable handling flooding emoji. That's entirely up to you. I would say start out at 3 times a week, and if you really feel good doing that and you're having great success with it, go to 4 times a week and see what happens. That's kind of the nice part about this is you're different than I am. How much you can do might be different than how much I can do. So, and you might be one that could just lay down on the ground and boom, you start shaking and you're off to the races. I just can't do that. So, and again, as your path progresses with this, we're here to talk to you. So,
okay. Is this something that would be safe for someone to do who is dissociating? Would this be a way to help the person to come out of dissociation, to ground them?
You were going to answer that, weren't you?
I was, but then I realized this is your session.
No, go ahead.
There's a danger, certainly, of dissociating at any point. And the way we keep people in the room while we're doing TRE is to keep their eyes open. We want to keep them in. We were told even by one of our instructors that even meditation can be a form of dissociation. And therefore they discourage people from meditating while they're doing TRE. So we try to keep, if there's any danger of that, try to keep people's eyes open, try to keep them in the room. We will talk to them, just to keep them in the room. We will maybe even touch them once in a while, just to engage their senses and keep them present with us.
Mm-hmm. It keeps so if you need to, just look around the room. Mm-hmm. From the perspective on the ground, you'll find things you didn't, like I can look around and say, oh, cobwebs, time to sweep.
Yeah, and David Berceli told us that there are soldiers who text while they do this. There are people who watch movies while they do this, read books, and all those are ways of really, almost distracting themselves for some people it's uncomfortable, you know, and therefore they're able to do TRE if they're distracted a little bit. So it just depends on the person.
Yep. And if you find that eventually your shoulder girdle will start opening up, so you might be moving more. That would make, for me, it would make that movie would be moving all over the place. I'd have a hard time following it. I just tend to keep my eyes open, and part of what I do that helps me is I just follow what my body's doing. I mean, in some regard, it's a fascinating process to see how it moves through the bodies, and then to develop sensory awareness of places that I oftentimes take for granted or forget are there. So that's one thing that I do.
Okay.
So this is supposed to be basically the opposite of fight or flight. We're actually relaxing the muscles that are engaged in fighting and fleeing.
Okay.
And so what we want to avoid, therefore, is anything that would take us into fight or flight while we're doing this. So therefore, a memory, you know, that produces anxiety. You know, anything that produces fight or flight, we just want to stop doing TRE. I haven't had it happen, but it can happen, you know. Does that make sense?
So TRE activates the parasympathetic nervous system.
Correct.
Yep.
Okay. And these exercises that we just did today, for me, it was just my legs trembling. But through these exact same exercises, some people are able to get the whole body or other parts of the body to tremble also.
Sure. Like I said, as you continue to do this, you'll find as you continue to do the exercises, your legs might start shaking, and then if you want to, sometimes just try it. Just stop your legs and see what happens. Just see if you can control that. Just see if you can stop it and see what happens. And because it took me a couple of weeks before it moved from my legs up into my pelvis, and then you remember that shuddering I told you about?
Yeah.
Boy, I started to get those, and that started moving up and down my body. And then after about a month, I could feel a little quiver in my jaw.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah, and so it will definitely move throughout your body if you give it time.
Yeah, it took me several months of just having my legs shaking before it started to move to other places in my body.
Okay. And do you find, or do people report that they're able to deal with stressful situations more readily? Like now that the tension and the energy isn't, what do I want to say, blocked in the body, that they're able to be more resilient?
That's exactly it.
Exactly.
Yeah. The resilience is the word I was thinking just as you asked that question. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. And that's because what'll happen is like Petra was saying, when I get stressed out now, excuse me, or let me say this, when I get overly stressed, I start to feel the quiver inside. So I know, I mean, it's not like my sympathetic nervous system gets fired off and I go, oh, cortisol. I don't do that. You start to feel that quiver because the energy's gone up so high, and then I go, oh, something activated me, and then I can look back and say, what activated me, and what am I going to do about it? So already I've developed a resiliency I didn't have because I can recognize that I've been activated, and now I say, okay, what can I do about this? Is this something I need to stand up to, or do I need to remove myself from the situation? What do I need to do to reduce this stress and deal with this issue? So just in the short run, that'll become your cue that, oh boy, I'm stressed out. Why? What's going on? That's already developed a resiliency you didn't have before. I mean, sometimes you might notice it, but it's long hours after the fact. And so anyway, yes, it's going to definitely, like I said, what will happen during this transformation is as this begins to unlock stuff inside of you and shake it all out, there's going to be transformations in all aspects of your life.
Okay. So it almost sounds like that you're able to re-engage or keep the prefrontal cortex engaged, whereas otherwise when you get activated, that shuts down.
Sure.
Which is this is exactly what we're trying to do to prevent the dissociation, keep the cortex online.
Yep.
So that people stay in the room.
Because the whole stress system comes out of your brain stem. And it's talking to your, the emotion, the amygdala and the hippocampus and all that. It runs things through the prefrontal cortex very briefly. But if everything else that's being done is in your brainstem, which has no language areas, well then, if we keep ourselves conscious here, we prevent ourselves from rolling back into that. Because then what happens is you roll back in your brainstem, and your brainstem only knows a couple of things. One of them is fight, one's flight. So,
automatic pilot.
Yep. So keeping the prefrontal cortex online keeps us away from the brainstem activating. Because and that's where the memory, because the memory says, oh my God, terror, fear, all the rest of that, it activates the brainstem again, and we want to avoid that. So.
Okay. Well, that sounds great. I really appreciate the input. This has been very helpful.
Well, I'm glad to hear that.
Still enrolled in the day-long workshop. Will they be doing additional things, or is it a longer workshop just because of it being a group of people?
There's certainly background information that we didn't talk about, and then also I believe they will be doing it twice. So once in the morning, once in the afternoon, and so there's more context setting, A
little bit more about the biology of the stress system, that kind of thing.
Okay, and I already have that background.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, and I guess my next step for me is to try to remember the different steps, and then I can ask you if I kind of forget the different exercises.
Sure. Yeah. Or one of the books, depending on how you learn. The DVD or the book can help remind you. Because it's 7 exercises. I mean, it does take a while. It's just remembering that they go from the ground up that kind of helps me. Put them all together one after the other.
These are all your flight muscles. Remember, it's all legs up to your hips and waist. You don't do anything with the fight muscles, which is our arms. This is all it's the defense muscles. It's your psoas that contracts you in your abdomen to protect you, and that bowing exercises stretches those. And then we do the flight muscles when we do the legs, and we start at the ankle. We move ourselves up. So it's the process of when the psoas gets tight like that. It wants to go. It's either going to engage a fight or let's get out of town, and let's get out of town just as fast as we can. And our system is so old that, your problem didn't used to be a boss or your car or anything like that. Your problem used to be, big teeth and claws or one of my brothers who came along said, well, I like you, and grabbed you by the hair and walked off with you. I mean, our stressors have changed in a very short period of time, but our system has been this way since the beginning almost.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And so you don't really do anything with the fight muscles.
Nope.
Okay.
It's all with the flight muscle. The only thing we're doing with our arms. But as you continue to do the tremoring, it will get to those muscles.
Okay.
So we're just using the fight muscles to trigger, or flight, muscles to trigger the whole thing.
Yep.
But it really does move all over your body. It winds up being a full body experience.
If you want, if you punch into Google, David Berceli's name and YouTube, he's got all kinds of them there. There's stuff there. He's got soldiers doing it, and police and firefighters, and you can kind of get a sense of how varied it can actually get. And because some people, boy, they lay down and and sometimes I'll start shaking when I'm doing the wall sit.
Okay.
I can feel that in my legs, and then I start doing a up and down kind of bouncing. And the first time I saw it was our workshop in Canada, and boy, people lined up on the wall and they were bouncing in no time. And I said, they've done this before.
Yep.
And these are I mean, and then other people, they went to the front of the room, laid down on the ground, so they started shaking.
Oh my goodness.
So I was like, oh, okay then. Well, something's going on. And it became, and like I said, I still do all the exercises. It just, because I work out so many times a week. So.
And it helps you go through the process.
Yep, it helps me to unlock the tension in my legs. So.
Yeah, I'm thinking it would be for me too. I think I would, at least for now, that's what I'd like to do. So.
Any other questions?
I think I'm good for now.
Okay. Well, you know how to get hold of us.
Okay, yeah.
So-
and I really appreciate this.
Hey, you are very welcome. And we thank you.
Thank you, Carol, for putting up with our
Yeah.
technological challenges.
Yeah, no kidding.
I hope it helps.
Yeah.